Something that I also see, a lot of women get frustrated if they have experienced something similar where they're like, I'm eating more, I'm starting to strength train, but the scale hasn't changed, or I'm actually gaining weight. That's not a bad thing at all, right? Because gaining muscle is going to make your body look different, even if the scale doesn't change, but they're attaching so much emphasis to a number that means literally nothing, and it doesn't translate to actually what your body looks like. So a lot of the women, like, fitness people on Instagram that other women might look at and think, oh, I want a body like that, she looks so great. I think a lot of them weigh more than these women realize, right? Like, having muscle, you're not this tiny little frail stick. Like, yes, you are gonna weigh something on the scale, but you're gonna look amazing at the same time. So like, it doesn't really matter. And I can say too, I feel like the number I see on the scale now probably would have terrified me, 5-10 years ago. I never would have wanted that at that time. And now I literally don't care.
Hey friends, welcome back. So today's show with Dr. Elly Michelle is brought to you by Myoscience Nutrition, tools to help you get a little bit more mileage and better recovery from your exercise session, which is what we're going to talk a lot about today, about hormonal health, the importance of building muscle, especially for women, as a way to support fertility, as a way to support mood and longevity. Now, a solution that can help you do just that is the new electrolyte sticks, because we know that hydration is very important and is linked with exercise performance and also recovery. What makes this formula different from all the other electrolytes out there is this features creatine and taurine paired with real salt and albion chelated minerals like magnesium, potassium, calcium. Now you might wonder, what does creatine have to do with the price of eggs in Hong Kong? Well, creatine actually helps improve the absorption of electrolytes and utilization and supports hydration. There's various studies to show that. Unfortunately, the electrolyte market hasn't really caught up with the science. So you can keep up with the science and pair creatine with your electrolytes by going over to myoscience.com. That's MYOXCIENCE.com. What's unique, again, about these electrolyte sticks is they're flavored with monk fruit, small amount of sweetener. You get a gram of creatine with all those different electrolytes and also taurine. They taste great. They mix easy. They're easy to travel with. You can have them before you work out, during your workout, or during an intermittent fasting session, or right before a sauna. So we know that hydration is important. We know that exercise is important. So you can pair these two together. That's how they're intended to function. So in today's show with Dr. Elly Michelle, it's part 2. We take a deeper dive into the importance of building muscle, of eating a little bit more carbs, carb cycling. We talk about the important connections between muscle health and metabolic health and its links with fertility and hormone health and mood and all of the things that are desirable for optimizing health as you age as a woman. So I really hope you enjoy this podcast. Again, it's the second time that we did a show with Dr. Elly, so I'll put a link in the description to part 1 if you want to check that out. But I think you'll enjoy this and the show notes that are linked below. So as always, friends, if you enjoy the content, hit that like button, share this video or episode with a friend or family member, and let's cut back to it with Dr. Elly Michelle. So Elly, it's great to have you back on the show to talk about all things muscle hypertrophy. We're going to get into breast implant illness, but maybe let's just, in case people haven't seen the first video that we did, which I think is like close to 90,000 views on YouTube. So awesome. Thank you for sharing such good content that resonates with people. I see this a lot in the fitness space still, this hypothalamic amenorrhea. I think it's good to sort of start there because of the fact that so many people now with summer upon us, weddings, there's a lot of dieting and things like that. And we know that dieting, especially for both genders, impacts hormones. But for women, there is a change within the menstruation cycle and so forth. And you did a great overview of what that is. Maybe let's start with that before we transition into muscle and carbs and all that.
Yeah.
So what happens to women when they are dieting, over-exercising with regards to their menstruation?
Well, if a woman is under fueling for the level of activity that she's doing, it is a huge stress to her body, specifically to her metabolic function. So, and when I say metabolic function or metabolism, I'm referring to all of the various biochemical processes that are occurring 24/7 constantly. We don't have to think about them, just to keep our bodies running and to keep all the systems working well. And so that requires energy, obviously. So anything that you're doing like extra, such as exercise, it's going to take even more energy. So if you're not fueling just your body functions, which if you're dieting, that's very easy for a woman to fall into that trap, the metabolism becomes stressed. So it's going to start to conserve energy. So anything that is not essential to keep you alive will get compromised. So the reproductive system is often one of the most, it's not essential to keep us alive. We don't need to reproduce. And so that's why so many women will experience menstrual irregularities. So they might still have periods, but they might start becoming irregular, or their cycles might become shorter or longer. They'll have spotting before their cycle or mid-cycle spotting, or their period might just go away altogether. Or they might have PMS. Like there's all kinds of different symptoms just related to their cycle. So some women will think just because that they're not having their period, or that they are still having their period, that everything's fine. But if there's still symptoms around their period, that can still be a sign of a stress metabolism related to underfueling and overtraining. So, yeah.
And our doctors, so some of these women might at first think, oh, it's so convenient. Like I don't have to like worry about my period anymore. But over the long haul, they might start to notice these other symptoms, weight gain or different changes or moodiness or
low
cognitive
libido
issues. So are doctors aware of this now? Are they like recognizing that, oh, if you've been dieting and over-exercising and you stop menstruating or there's cycle changes, and how would one test for this to see if they might have, is it blood tests or the Dutch? Like, what do you start as a practitioner?
Well, if the period has gone away completely and they have a history of dieting, it's pretty clear to me, just, symptom wise, it's very clear to me what's going on. But if you do labs, you will often see low estrogen, like estrogen will be in a menopausal range. You'll definitely see low progesterone. You have to test progesterone at the right time in the cycle. So if she's not cycling, meaning she's not having periods, then it's like you're not going to see progesterone at all, because a woman has to ovulate in order to make it. So no ovulation, no progesterone. What else? You'll often see a low thyroid as well. So that's a huge indicator to me. If the thyroid is low or thyroid hormones are low, then that's very clear that she's underfueling too.
Right. The one thing that I see very commonly, unfortunately, and I know this must be very hard, for both genders, is hair loss. And then also getting like male pattern secondary sex characteristics like hair in the face. So let's say someone's been chronically dieting, and so their relative amounts of estrogen and progesterone are low in relation to testosterone. Do women start to, if they're in this situation, start to develop like facial hair and male pattern baldness?
Yeah, they can. This is more related to PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. So that is, it can present kind of similarly to hypothalamic amenorrhea, otherwise known as HA. It's easier to say. So some people will get misdiagnosed and their doctor will tell them that they have PCOS when they really have HA. So to answer your first question about do doctors understand that this is happening, I think that it's still not well enough recognized, especially in the more conventional medical community. Often women are coming in saying that they're not getting their period and they're just given the birth control pill to regulate their period, where it's really not doing that at all. It's just continuing to suppress hormones when they're already suppressed. So now if you put in synthetic, you're giving them a pharmaceutical substance, essentially. It's not even a hormone. It's just a hormone disruptor. It's going to further keep the hormones in a suppressed state.
Can we pause there? I want to get back to the hair stuff, but I think a lot of people don't understand just how problematic birth control is. And I'm so disappointed in how many people are actually still on birth control. Like I thought the message is out there like, hey, this stuff is bad news. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people are like, oh, if I get off my birth control, I'm like a nut job. I've heard people say like, I just can't control my emotions. I'm really moody and irritable. So they're like, sort of, it's like tethered to them. Yeah. Or
they're just terrified of getting pregnant.
True.
Because the women have been told that we can get pregnant literally any time. Like that. Yeah, exactly. And it's not how it works.
But so I'm sure there's different types. Obviously hormonal birth control. Does it go through synthetic estrogens and synthetic progestins and cycle through, or is it just always?
No. So the way that it works is the birth control pill will suppress ovulation, that is the mechanism of action. So it basically it shuts off the brain's communication with the ovaries. So if a woman can't ovulate, she is never fertile, because ovulation is what makes us fertile. Right. We have to release the egg from the ovary in order for it to get fertilized, but it just shuts off that process. So, and that's a hormonal process. You know, the brain has to tell the ovaries to make hormones in order for that whole process to occur, for ovulation to occur. So if it's not happening, we're just basically like, it's essentially putting you into a hormonal state of menopause every single day. Like your hormones are just flatlined. And it also puts you in, even though your hormones are low, you're still in a more estrogen dominant state. So a lot of women will end up getting like estrogen dominant related issues during birth control or even after, as a result of not having progesterone around for a chronic period of time. So like I've seen women who end up with, ovarian cysts or fibroids, endometriosis, all kinds of other hormonal issues, just as a result of being on the pill for many years.
Gallbladder issues too, is that part?
Yes.
I was wondering why that is so common in women, and I never made that link, but I have worked with people who have been on the pill of gallbladder. Mm-hmm. This is problematic, and the people that I've worked with who have been on birth control for a long time, hormonal birth control, they often have sleep issues. And obviously because progesterone does help facilitate sleep. But I'm thinking just like if you zoom out like the 50,000 foot view, we think about circadian rhythms throughout a day, but also throughout a month, and if you're just like squashing the hormonal rhythm, right? Mm-hmm. It's probably going to then influence different peripheral clocks with regards to metabolism and sleep.
Digestion.
And you're like, dude, you're really throwing a big monkey wrench in the whole system.
Yeah. Well, women don't understand that our hormones do so much more. They're involved in so much more than just reproduction. They're really key to just our overall well-being and health. And so it's going to affect our brain and our mood and our sleep, like you said, our digestion. The pill has been found, the women who are on the pill have been found to have higher inflammatory markers as well. So it increases inflammation, more gut dysbiosis. So yeah, it's a huge problem.
This is crazy. I feel ignorant, but I have not dove into the peer-reviewed academic literature on hormonal birth control. Are there like scientists talking about this, or is this just more practitioners who get it?
I mean, I've really only seen practitioners who get it, but I think more and more women on their own are figuring out. I mean, a lot of the women who come to me, they've recently gone off the pill on their own because they've started researching it. I mean, I think Dr. Jolene Brighton was a huge pioneer in that area, and she wrote her book, Beyond the Pill. And so I think a lot of women are coming across that, learning about it on their own. But then they find that there's so much information, they don't really know where to start. So that's where I think working with somebody one-on-one to help you navigate that whole process can be helpful. And they're scared. A lot of the time they're scared to come off because they're like, they hear about all these horrible things that happen when women go off. So they're like, is that going to happen to me? But it doesn't always happen. Some women will go off and feel better right away, or, it's not that big of a deal. So
there's probably a transition, and I think maybe it's a good time to transition to talk about maybe what would be the steps, right? With both exercise-induced changes in hormones and dieting, and also the pill, we should be able to expect that this could take a little while. And this happens for men too. Men that go on anabolic steroids or testosterone, their hormone levels are low and they're going to feel like crap for a little while, but you can climb out of that hole.
Yes.
And maybe that's a good place to start to talk about, like, okay, with HA, we need food, we need energy, we can't chronically undereat.
That's the number one thing.
Yeah.
You need the energy, and you need the right nutrients.
And I mean, again, not to transition, but there's a lot of people who want to go on a vegan plant-based diet.
Yeah.
And what do you find with specific regards to hormones in that context?
These people are nutrient deficient. That's what I've seen, because I run micronutrient panels on everyone that I work with one-on-one. And if they have been on a plant-based diet for a long time, they're low in so many nutrients that are essential for hormone function and detoxification. Liver detoxification is very intimately connected with hormone health. So that is a huge, huge problem. Even if they eat meat, they don't have to be completely plant-based, but I think most people, or most women, I should say, are still under the impression that meat, especially red meat, is something that they need to minimize, or just, have it just maybe, 2-3 times a week. or if that. So, or they're just mostly eating chicken. So yeah, so a lot of women are still nutrient deficient. Even if they're incorporating it, it's just still not quite as much as they need. They don't recognize how much of a real, I mean, it's the OG superfood.
Yeah, right. But it's portrayed as being like so problematic for you and everything.
Yeah.
Just curious, when it comes to micronutrient testing, is there, and it probably depends on the context and the person, but what would be your go-to method of assessing that?
I use Vibrant America's micronutrient panel. So it tests for vitamins, minerals, amino acids, antioxidants, and fatty acids.
Nice. And that's whole blood, I think, right?
Yes. So it looks at two different cellular compartments. It's looking in the plasma or the serum and the cell. Okay. So either a white blood cell or a red blood cell. Cool. So I like to have the full picture. And if you're just testing serum alone, you're not getting the full picture. It's much more like transient, whatever's in the serum. Mm-hmm. So I like to know what's actually getting absorbed into the cell. And it helps to see, if you're doing follow-up testing, you can see, like, is the person actually absorbing the nutrients, whether it's through food or supplements. Right.
Which is a big key thing.
Yeah.
With regards to anemias, iron deficiency anemias in women, how common would you say that is for the people that you work with?
It depends. I don't see iron low all the time. I definitely see it sometimes, but I think B vitamins are a lot bigger. I see low B12 a lot more often than I see low iron. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or I mean, all the B vitamins, B12, B6, folate, right? And those are so important for hormones and for fertility and for detoxification and for brain function and for energy. So, yeah.
Okay. So I love where this is going, but one thing that I just wanted to, how do we convey to people, right? So someone has all these issues going on, but they've been eating a very low calorie diet for a long time. And we see this going out to dinner with friends or whatever. They order the iceberg lettuce and have some carrots. And it's like, we're talking about very undernourished. Yeah. How do we convince them? Or by the time that people see you, are they mentally like, look, what I'm doing is not working, so therefore I'm going to listen to you? Like, how do you convince someone that, like, hey, the way to improve your health is actually to eat more? Like, that's a hard sell for some people. So I'm just curious, like, how, mental gymnastics, like, how do you persuade?
It is mental gymnastics. That's a good way of putting it. I often refer to it as you really have to unlearn everything that you thought you knew about health and metabolism, because so many people, and women especially, because that's who I work with primarily, have been under the impression that, health is about eating less, exercising more. And I really try to have them do the opposite. Because in order to have optimal health and in order to be healthy, the body needs energy. So if you're constantly depriving it and you're constantly underfueling, you're constantly in a state of restriction, that is going to lead to problems over time. The body's going to start breaking down because it doesn't have the energy to function, right? That's how you end up with hormone issues, whether it's HA or any other hormonal imbalance. So, I mean, stress, I should say, really zooming out, stress is really the number one problem, but being in a low energy state for a chronic period of time is a huge stressor. So that's one of the most common stressors, I would say, that I see.
So you say stress, psychological stress, work stress, life stress, you see that as like the number one thing that people are...
No, any type of stress. So it could be a physical stress, it could be emotional, it could be psychological, it could be environmental. So yeah, I think that is the number one root cause of any type of health problem, I would say. But because hormonal problems are so common. And so in order to, I think, I just really focus on trying to educate women and provide them with the right knowledge, so that they can start to just understand the body better and how the body works. And then that can help to motivate them to start making some changes when they actually understand the role of energy and the role of having the right nutrients, because we just, when we don't know, we just think, oh, I'm going to just do what I see all the women around me doing, which, right. I think that's a huge problem, is that women are just exposed to dieting, and, whether it's from their mom or another family member or friends, we just get influenced by our environment. And so we just kind of do what the people around us are doing without really understanding why or what it's doing in the body.
Right. Which is why it's so cool eating with women like yourself or other people that, at conferences, seeing women eat steak and like avocados, and like, gosh, most of the people are like, whoa, you're going to have a 10-ounce ribeye? Like, oh, you're not going to split that up with your husband and just chow it down. And they're lean, they're fit, they're strong. So, and they're happy and stable. So, I think having like, the company that you are aligned with really influences you as well. So that's a big part of it that I think is key. But if we can get sort of tactical, and I know this is maybe if we can sort of bifurcate this into people who regularly exercise and people who don't, they're having hormonal issues because of chronic dieting and over-exercising and so on. When it comes to like, and I know this is custom tailored, so it's hard to do a big general thing, but meal frequency, like 2 meals a day, 3 meals a day, snacking, where do you find, again, everyone's unique and they got to try this stuff on, but where do you find the most success with, again, people who are fit and active, who want to build a muscle, they're sold on it, and people who are like, I'm already a little heavy. What should I be doing in terms of meal frequency?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. Well, I mean, I think everyone should be focusing on building muscle, right? Whether you're on the side of you're already fit and active. Well, I say that, take that with a grain of salt. But people who are on the other end of the spectrum as well. I mean, that is the best way for them to improve their health, is to focus on building muscle mass. So yeah, it's going to depend on the individual. Everybody is a little bit different, but I suggest, I really try to go back to like basic healthy eating habits. And I think for the majority of people, having 3 main meals a day is really the best routine to at least start with. Some people might find that, they really like having bigger meals less frequently in the day, throughout the day. And some people feel better having a bit smaller sized meals more frequently. So I say either, 3 meals per day or maybe 4 to 6 smaller meals. It really depends on the person. I really like to have bigger meals spread out. That's how I feel my best. I like to eat. So I'm like, if I have a small meal, I'm like, I'm going to be hungry again, really quickly. Much. It doesn't hold me over. And so I really like to eat to true satisfaction, which means I need to eat a larger amount. But some people some people feel like too full, or, they feel like they have digestive issues if they eat that much. So they do better doing smaller meals, but more frequently through the day. So it really just depends.
Right. And this is where I think like trying things and trying to figure out what works for you instead of sort of following what the guru says, because there was one study, and the title, and I'll share it on the screen here, have Sam throw it up, nibbling versus gorging. And it had actually elderly women eating once a day and then having younger women eating 6 meals a day. And it turns out that in both situations, actual muscle protein synthesis was increased. So I think it's like you said, you have tried what works for you, and 3 meals a day is good. But other people, I know some people who train really hard, have a lot of muscle and are lean, and they prefer like smaller meals. So I think having the ability to and the confidence within oneself to just try it on and see what works. And I think this is where, there's this book, The Coddling of the American Mind, that talks about, how just the educational system or what have you, and we really are afraid to sort of think for ourselves sometimes, And so I just encourage people to always take what they hear, like how you introduced it that last, with a grain of salt, and just say, look, I'm going to try this and see what works. If it's not working, and don't change it every day, but maybe try something consistent for 8 weeks and then retry it. So having that flexibility is key. But again, with the mindset that, like you said, we need muscle mass, especially as women. There was one study that showed that the relative proportion of muscle is heavily weighted in the legs for women compared to the upper body, which incidentally, the legs also, for whatever reason, you tend to lose more muscle mass in your legs over the course of a lifetime. So women need to prioritize muscle, especially in the legs, and that's where food comes in. You can't really build muscle fasting all day.
You cannot build a butt if you're under eating.
Yeah, that's
everyone wants a booty.
Yeah, no, it's
you have to be in a surplus.
Yes. Which I want to get to training and specifically, but since we're on nutrition, how important do you think, everyone has different perspectives on protein and how much lean mass you have and sort of titrating? Do you track macros at this point in where you're?
I personally don't track that much. I'm very conscious of my protein intake. So if I track anything, it's more going to be that, making sure that I'm getting optimal protein throughout the day. But I don't track, specific grams of carbohydrates and fat. I have tried doing, in past years, I definitely, kind of was susceptible to all the low carb stuff. So I was very much kind of on that side of the spectrum for a long time, but my hormones were shot and I was not really building that much muscle despite training a lot. And so I was in a very depleted state. I was not optimally healthy at all. So over time, I've really started to increase my carbs and not rely so much on fat as my extra. I mean, I still eat fat. I don't restrict it by any means, but I'm much more focused and intentional about eating more carbohydrates now because I am very active and I would like to continue gaining muscle and gaining strength. And I understand that, you know, for me, even if I'm eating optimal protein, my gains really do require carbohydrates for me to see that and for me to maintain healthy hormones and really good energy, mood, good sleep. You know, carbs are very anti-stress. So for me and a lot of my clients, I found that that's really key because it's pretty well understood if you're already very interested in fitness and building muscle and strength training. Protein's pretty much like everyone has a pretty good understanding of that. But carbs are still a tricky one for a lot of women.
They are. And I think a lot of people are scared of carbs because, you know, there's been a lot of talk about the benefits of nutritional ketosis and then you have this whole insulin thing. But what a lot of people don't realize is that when you have muscle, you're much better able to control glucose and insulin dynamics. And so it's, carbs in context is what I tell people. And it's different if we're talking about a 400-pound overweight diabetic who doesn't exercise, probably not a good thing.
There is like a therapeutic time and place for restricting carbohydrates, but for a lot of women who are already very athletically inclined and interested in fitness, you know, carbs can really, really help you. And if you're not seeing progress, but yet you've been, you know, you're training a lot, you exercise very frequently and you're frustrated, that might be a huge missing piece.
Totally. So if we can get tactical, again, every day is probably different for you and different seasons and so forth, but what are like the top carb sources that you rely upon? And then do you strategically have more or less carbs around exercise or just throughout the day?
I pretty much eat almost the same, I would say, whether it's a day that I'm training or not. That's another thing I've seen. Women are scared to eat if they're not training that day. But especially for me, like if I trained the day before or 2 days ago, I understand that my body's now preparing because when you train, you're not actually building muscle. When you train, you're actually breaking it down. So it's the time that you're recovering, how you recover and how you're fueling during that time is going to dictate the progress that you see and if your body's able to rebuild the muscle. And so I'm actually I probably eat more on my off days because that's when my body's recovering. Or the same because I need to fuel the activity that I'm doing and then I need to fuel the recovery after. So I don't think there's anything, you know, hugely different. I would say I'm more likely to eat like dessert or more treats on the day that I train, like right after to refuel muscle glycogen. But yeah, in terms of carbohydrates, like I pretty much eat them with every meal just to have balance. I eat protein, carbs, and fats with every meal. I definitely do try to make sure I have them before training to fuel my performance and then after to replete glycogen.
That's awesome. Yeah. And are we talking sweet potatoes, rice, yams, bread, pasta, like what?
I don't do bread personally. I feel much better without gluten. So I do a lot of sweet potatoes. I do a lot of white rice. I do a lot of fruit. I have been experimenting with more like juice that I'll do. You know, I don't do, you know, huge cups of it or anything, but I'll have some, like I'll put a little orange juice in my drink that I will sip on when I train to just continue having some just quick energy coming in because my sessions tend to be pretty hard and sometimes they'll last for a while. So I don't want my blood sugar to drop in those, or like sipping on something on my way home, on my drive home, so that I have something in me right away. That I found to be really helpful. But yeah, I would say fruit, rice, and sweet potatoes or regular potatoes are kind of my go-tos.
So it's essentially a paleo diet, right? And which it's funny how the pendulum always swings. And paleo was the first thing to get really popular, like in mid 2000s. And then it went extreme to carnivore. And then some people are coming kind of back, right? So, but again, if you had say Hashimoto's or rheumatoid arthritis, and every time you had rice, you had a flare.
Exactly.
It'd be a different thing. So
and that's something I do see, you know, some people really do need, depending on whatever health issues they're dealing with. Sometimes we have to make some changes temporarily to allow the body to heal. But yeah, everyone is going to be different depending on like what symptoms they're experiencing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Small little anecdotal side story about the juice thing. A friend of mine who unfortunately passed away, Charles Poliquin, when I met him in Colorado in like 2006 range, we started talking about hypertrophy and things like that. And he said, one of the tricks that I recommend, and I learned this from someone in Europe, was first thing in the morning, this is before you have breakfast or anything. So like if you get up at 6, maybe around 7 or something, make your own juice with whey protein, then have a meal like 2 hours later. And I was like, he's like, it's just try it to see what happens.
With whey protein?
With whey protein.
Okay.
So I bought this juicer and I would get oranges and grapefruits and make juice with the whey protein. And I was like the strongest that I've ever been, like naturally, because I have done steroids in college. And it was like pretty much instantaneously. And I was wondering like mechanistically, are we like replenishing muscle glycogen or stimulating whatever? But I remember just like and it could have been a little placebo too, because like if someone tells you something and you believe it, like roll with it. Like I think we should exploit the placebo effect. But anyway, so I think a lot of people might hear you say, oh my gosh, she recommends juice.
Oh my God, sugar.
Like, gosh, you're going to cause diabetes. But look, if you're trained, like some of these,
if you're training, your body is like burning through that, and it's going to support your energy production. Yeah. Yeah. And like I said too, carbs or sugar is anti-stress in a healthy metabolism.
Right. Yeah. And it's in context because you're exercising. Yeah. But one of the things that I'll do, I don't have a juicer. Maybe I'll consider, doing that again and trying, but I'll bring like dried fruit with me sometimes. So in between sets, I'll have like a mango or a date or whatever.
Yeah. Or coconut water. I also love coconut water for that.
Good idea. So I think it's helpful for people to hear this. Now, I still love, like we had exogenous ketones before this conversation, right? So it's not
my first time.
We don't believe, like I believe in the health benefits of keto and low carb. But if I'm being brutally honest with myself, I'm going to have a way better workout having carbohydrates compared to trying to be like a keto hero. So it's just helpful for.
And I think a lot of women, this is, myself included, this is something I've worked on for many years, but if we're health conscious, we're very susceptible to all the different, like fads that are out there. Cause that's really what all these different types of, they're biohacking or whatever, like all these nutritional fads that happen, they're forms of restriction essentially. And so we can be very prone to kind of really taking that too seriously and internalizing them too much, and in a time where it's probably inappropriate. Yeah. So for women who already are dealing with like thyroid issues, hormone issues, fatigue, digestive problems, sleep disturbances, low libido, all these things, it's not necessarily in your best interest to, continue to follow a restrictive diet if you're dealing with health problems. It's likely the health problems are a result of too much restriction over too long of a period of time, right? Like restrictive diets only work, your body's only going to respond to them if your metabolism is already healthy and it's done for a short period of time. That's how it's designed to be done. You're not supposed to do it for like months and months or years and years. That's how you set yourself up for health issues.
Totally. We've talked about this before, but even just, 12 weeks of being excessively restrictive, and there's that Biggest Loser follow-up study that actually showed that, in that, like, I don't know how many weeks that particular study was, but there was still an observable suppression in resting metabolic rate from doing the short-term sort of extreme low-calorie diets. And so you have people that have been doing this on and off and on and off for years. Yeah. And they can't eat more than like iceberg lettuce and carrots, and they're wondering why.
And people who are always in like a phase, like a dieting phase or a fat loss phase, and then like an off season where they're rebuilding, like your metabolism gets so confused. It's like, it's harder and harder for those types of things to even work because you have to keep going to even more extremes to see a difference. So I think, my intention is to really promote something that is sustainable and going to actually promote health in the long term. And you can still feel really good about your body and feel confident. Like that's where we want to be, is find that place of what's something that I can sustain and have optimal health, but still feel great in my body.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, so it's been about a year since you've increased carbohydrate intake and and all of this. So you probably have gained all this weight, right?
So much. No, my weight's exactly the same.
Amazing. But you
Yeah.
feel like there's been a lot of recomposition.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I mean, if I look at a picture of myself now, or if I just, look at my body now versus a year ago, and I was by no means unhappy with it. I just knew the benefits of continuing to get stronger. I love to train. I love strength training. I understand how beneficial it is for my long-term health. So that's really my main driver. And so I mean, it's fun to get stronger, it's kind of addicting. Like when you start to get stronger, you want to keep, sort of beating yourself. And so, yeah, I have definitely seen changes, but my weight has not changed. And so something that I also see, a lot of women get frustrated if they have experienced something similar where they're like, I'm eating more, I'm starting to strength train, but the scale hasn't changed, or I'm actually gaining weight. That's not a bad thing at all, right? Because gaining muscle is going to make your body look different, even if the scale doesn't change, but they're attaching so much emphasis to a number that means literally nothing, and it doesn't translate to actually what your body looks like. So I'm totally fine that, like, I wasn't trying to, I don't really care what the scale says as long as I feel good. So, yeah.
That's great. I mean, there's these societal sort of expectations about what a man or a woman should or shouldn't weigh. And so I think we buy into that, and we don't realize that, like you said, the weight means nothing. Like there was this F45 Fitness or something in Kirkland. They have a great picture of like someone who weighs 200 pounds or something, and it's like person A versus person B, and the body composition is totally different.
Yep.
Person B has a bunch of muscle. Person A weighs the same, but has all this fat around the abdomen.
Yeah.
So we should be this is 2022 as we film this.
Yeah.
Like we should be focusing on body composition, not BMI.
I think a lot of the women, like, fitness people on Instagram that other women might look at and think, oh, I want a body like that. She looks so great. I think a lot of them weigh more than these women realize, right? Like having muscle, you're not this tiny little frail stick. Like, yes, you are going to weigh something on the scale, but you're going to look amazing at the same time. So like, it doesn't really matter. And I can say too, I mean, I feel like the number I see on the scale now probably would have terrified me, 5-10 years ago. I never would have like wanted that at that time. And now I literally don't care. It's fun to be strong and to eat.
It's such a great mind shift. I wish that was a teachable thing. Maybe I'm bad at communicating that particular way of encouraging people to change their mindset around, weight or muscle or whatever. But I think some people just need to come to the realization themselves. And I recently watched the new Tom Cruise Maverick, and then a friend of mine, Cynthia, shared like a before and after with Kelly, who was in the version 1 with Tom Cruise versus.
I saw that.
And then if you look at how they have aged over the past 30 some odd years, it's totally different. And Tom, I don't know about his diet. I know he's generally low-ish carb, but is an exercise enthusiast. And you could really see the trajectory in aging. And so since then, I've gotten a lot of blowback, but some good messages from a lot of people like, Mike, thank you for sharing that. That was the aha moment that I need. Like, I don't want to be older and skinny. And frail. And one of the things that happens as we age, specifically in the muscles, is we lose the fast twitch fibers, which you get from lifting, explosive movements, from weight training. So if you want to age better, you need to lift freaking weights and get stronger because of that.
That's my number one motivating factor, honestly, is like I say, I train to be an old lady. Like I'm training for my elderly life, because the older we get or the more we age, the harder it is to build a muscle, because the rate that our muscle starts to break down starts to increase with age. And so, the sooner you start, the better. And then the better able you can maintain that over time. So my goal is to be strong and resilient and vibrant and not frail.
That's awesome.
And I think it was Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. I heard her on a podcast recently say they think there's like a 50%. If a woman over 65 falls, that there's a 50% chance that she'll be able to walk again. And for me, with my history, I have a history of a severe eating disorder when I was a teenager. And so I, from a DEXA scan, know that I had some bone loss from that time. So a lot of what started me on this journey is trying to rebuild bone mineral density to prevent that from happening, because I want to be able to walk. You know, if I fall, I don't want that to ruin me. So, and a lot of the falls are due to weakness, right? Like you don't have the stability to like brace yourself with, and protect yourself as you fall. So I think it's really strength is what will help to prevent that, not just having the strong bones, but also being strong in general.
I love this. And, you know, this disordered eating thing is again, another one of these very common things. I would say that pretty much every woman I've ever dated has experienced some form of it, right? And so I think that could be a nice motivator for people if they think, gosh, well, yeah, when I was in high school or I was in college, you know, I went through this period and this and that of where I was not under eating and or vomiting or whatever. And so, yeah, there could be some susceptibility. So I think that could be a nice wake up call for some people to realize like, hey, I need to get my butt into the gym or start doing some sort of resistance training.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're going to resistance train and you want to maintain hormone health, you're going to have to fuel for it, because that's the trap is that, I'm going to start strength training, but if you keep eating the way that you are, or if you're still under eating, you're going to keep your hormones in a suppressed state. So, you know, coming full circle back to the first subject of HA, that's the other thing that's going to protect your bones is your estrogen.
Excellent point. Excellent point.
And so if you are strength training, but you're in a low estrogen or a low hormonal state, the strength training is not going to do very much for your bones. You need the stimulation from estrogen to protect the bones. Yes. That's the only way that you're going to get the response that you actually want. And for women, estrogen's anabolic. So if you actually want to build muscle, you can't without estrogen, right? Like for us, it's like testosterone.
I didn't know that. So I'm going back to like birth control. So if you're on birth control, would you expect like body composition changes? Like it'd be harder to get?
Yes, it would be harder because your hormones are being suppressed. There's actually a study on that. I'll try to find it and send it to you after. But there is a study that women who are on oral contraceptives, they will see less body composition change from strength training. Like they're not able to build muscle as well as women who have their natural hormones. Yeah.
This brings me to a thing that I think is quite interesting. Like some people, we need progress in life. Like if you read a book and you didn't remember any of it, it probably will be the last time you read a book. So you're like, what's the point of like reading this? So if you go to the gym and you don't experience any benefits, it's unlikely to be a habit. And so I think like all of this comes full circle. Like you need to have the food in order to have the workout, in order to get the benefits and build the muscle. And then your hormones need to be in check. So you know what I mean? So it's, so I hear some people say, I just hate the gym. And I often go, what is it about the gym that you hate? Is it the meatheadness of the gym? Are guys coming to pick up on you? Is it that you don't know what you're doing? Or I think a big part of it is you go there and you don't experience any benefits. So you see it as like a useless utility or
you're just not training in the right way. Because I think a lot of women are just kind of doing the same program for like months at a time, like the same thing over and over. Like there's no progressive overload. You're just doing like, you know, some booty band workout that you saw on Instagram. You're just doing a bunch of random things. Maybe like there's really no structure to it. And the exercises that you're doing maybe there's not enough compound lifts. So yeah, I think if that's the case, then you just need a smart program to follow.
And speaking of which, about a year ago, you hired a coach for the specific reason. You were like, look, I need knowledge that I don't yet have, right?
Yes.
Hire an expert. So let's walk through, because instead of just DMing a bunch of people, you paid someone to give you a program. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, I've pretty much since I started strength training had a mentor. So, and I touched on this, I think the last time that we did a podcast together, but when I started, I hired someone. When I recognized that this was something that I needed to explore and to learn about, I hired someone right away to teach me everything from scratch. So I trained with her for several years at least. And then I had a bit of a break for a little while, and I felt like I had a really good foundation from her that I was able to maintain. But then I kind of got to a point where I recognized that I wasn't really making progress anymore. And I just kind of feeling like, I'm doing the same thing. I need more of a program, and I need someone to design this for me. I need an expert to tell me what to do. And I'm very much of the mindset that like, if I'm struggling in a certain area, I find someone who has the result that I want, and then I pay them to tell me what to do.
Awesome.
So that's what I've done, in multiple areas of my life. I find someone who, is amazing. They have the result that I'm looking for, and they guide me. So I found my coach, Rebecca Rouse. I knew of her. We were acquaintances. And so I reached out to her. She had recently started her business online. And I just really admired her. I mean, she is incredibly strong. I knew her background. So she came from Equinox, which has a really, really solid program that they put all their trainers through, really good education. So I really trusted her expertise and her knowledge. And I knew she was certified in kettlebells, and she had a lot of extra certifications and extra education. So, and I just look at her, like I really watch what someone does and what they put out there and how they're showing up. And I really respected just her level of integrity and her level of knowledge. And so I was like, yep, this is who I want to guide me.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put her links in the show notes, Instagram and everything like that.
Yeah.
What have you found? Again, this is very individual, right? But I asked this with that in context. What's been the most sort of impactful with regards to building muscle and feeling better? Is it, because I see you do a lot of kettlebell type stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's Rebecca.
You like the kettlebells?
I love the kettlebells. Yeah. I mean, I love kettlebell and barbell. I mostly have been doing a combination of those things. But yeah, I love kettlebells.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So does she put that in your program because you like it, or have you learned to like it because she programs it for you?
It's kind of both. I mean, when I started with her, I was just like, I'm a piece of clay.
Yeah,
like
mold
just
me
mold me, make me into more of an athlete. Just make me stronger, make me more athletic. Give me whatever you think I will benefit from. And like, she was like, what are your goals? And I said, I just want to, be as strong as I can, become more athletic. And so she's really thrown a bunch of different things at me. And we started with kettlebells pretty much right away, I think. Much more. I already knew how to do swings, but that was it. That's all I knew how to do when I first started with her. So she trained me to do a bunch of other different types of movements with kettlebells, and I really liked them. So she's continued to progress me and add more advanced types of exercises into my programs. But I think that I have a background in yoga and dance. And so I think I really gravitated towards kettlebells, and I really enjoy them because it's almost like choreography. Like with yoga, you're blending movement, mind, body, and breath. And kettlebells, there's a lot of breathing technique required as well to really master the movements. And so I think I really like that it's similar to yoga in that way, where there's this mind, body, breath union that's happening. And then with my background in dance, it's almost like choreography because you're often connecting movements. Like if you're doing a kettlebell flow, you're connecting different movements together. So I like that a lot.
That's great.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people should strive to, put a round peg into a round hole, not a square peg into a round hole, right? So you're figuring out the exercises that work for you. And I think that is just amazing.
I mean, I really feel that you should do what's fun. Like do it because it's fun, not because you feel like you have to have the perfect body or you have to like get your body to look a certain way. I mean, everyone's motivator is going to be different. And if aesthetics is your main motivator, like that's fine. There's nothing really wrong with that. But I think that for me, like having these other deeper drivers is really what makes it something that I look forward to and that I want to continue to do for, as long as possible, because I enjoy it really at the end of the day. Like it's just fun for me. And that's really because of, I think the movements that I'm doing are fun. To continue to see progress is fun. To just feel stronger. I mean, it translates into every aspect of my life. Like it makes me, everyone thinks that like having the perfect body is what will make them feel more confident. But I really think that it's from within. Like confidence is an inside job 100%. And I think that building strength, it fosters that internal confidence because you just feel more powerful when you build strength and you see what you're capable of.
Which is key. And then when you're in those vulnerable moments or whatever, you know that you can draw upon that because you've done it before.
Yeah.
And there is no perfect body. I mean, ask any bodybuilder who looks like they're perfect. They're gonna be like, I still have to work on this, right? Like my serratus interior is not quite how I want it. So
I think the more fixated you are on like the specifics and the aesthetics, like the more you feel like your body isn't perfect. Whereas to everybody else, they're like, oh my gosh, like their body is incredible. Yeah.
It's a wonderful point. Okay. What about tactics with frequencies? So let's say you mentioned the glutes. But, a lot of women want to build glutes, and I totally get that. Frequency, are you hitting 2 days a week, 3 days a week? Like, what have you found is sort of optimal in that regard?
I feel for me, I do really well with 3 days a week strength training. Because, I mean, if I'm training hard enough, I really need that recovery time. I don't think that more is better. I think that's where you start to overly stress your body, and then you create an obstacle to actually seeing real results and making progress. So I really like to train hard and to push myself, but then I need to let my body recover before I go and do it again. Mm-hmm. So 3 days a week works really well for me. Most of my programs have been full body each time. So I think I only had one phase where it was broken up, where there were like some days that were more upper body and some days that were more lower body. I have done that maybe for like 1 12-week session, or program, but most of my days have been full body. So yeah, I pretty much hit deadlifts once a week, squats once a week. And then, I mean, there's upper body exercises, but all my programs are designed around like push, pull, vertical, horizontal.
Yeah. Right on. Mm-hmm. And just curious, I know you've done some things about this, with pull-ups, and you're doing more pull-ups. Yeah. It's taken me so many years to like get more proficient at pull-ups.
So hard.
Where'd you start and where are you now? I'm just curious.
Oh my gosh. It took me years just to be able to do one. Yeah. It took me such a long time. That was probably still because I was under eating, because I started strength training and I did it for years when I was still under eating. Like looking back, I know that I didn't, even though I was strength training a lot, I wasn't building that much muscle. I was still pretty thin. And like wasn't getting a period, etc. And so like, is that how I would recommend doing it? Probably not. Now I suggest, really focus on getting your metabolism and your hormones healthy before you start adding a stress like that. But yeah, live and learn.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, I think that I wasn't making progress for a long time because I just didn't have the energy to build the strength required to do a pull-up. So that's like on a foundational level. I think now I have this more strength now because the way that I fuel and having hormones makes a big difference. And then just the consistency, training them regularly. Core strength was big. Like I think the more core stability I've developed, the stronger my pull-up has gotten.
Makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of people think of it as just an upper body exercise, which it very much is, but the core stability is huge for pull-ups.
Right.
And that's something that not a lot of women are focusing on. They think they just need to do crunches and like the ab exercises, but those exercises don't translate into the actual lifts that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. And the bracing and the whole thing.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, it makes sense. I mean, if you're not engaging your core, then you're not able to engage your back and lats to be able to perform the pull up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So training frequency 3 days a week. And then on other days, are you walking, doing hiking? What do you like to do like on those?
I pretty much walk daily. That's just sort of like a foundational practice that I like to do. Yeah. So I try to do walks every day. I don't try to like hit a certain amount of steps. I'm not like, oh my God, I have to get 10,000 steps. I don't do that. I just try to get outside, get fresh air, move. But besides strength training, I love to hike, but I can only really do that no, you can do it in the cold. I prefer to do it when it's summer. Right. So I haven't been doing that much yet.
The weather around
it will
here
come.
Has been so bad.
I know. Man. We've had like the never ending winter. We barely got spring.
It's crazy. Yeah. Well, there's mushrooms. Sam and I just did a walk, before, and the mushrooms are fruiting like as though it's October. Like it's crazy.
Weird.
Like normally you'll only see like truffles and things like that this time of year because they come out when it's more dry. But all of the chanterelles, like you can get chanterelles in June in Washington, which normally it's only in October.
That's so weird.
So bizarre. But we've had that much moisture. So
yeah.
No,
yeah, but I chill.
Yeah.
I take it pretty easy. I don't feel like I need to really stress about working out on the days that I'm not. So I do my walk and doing other things, focusing on other things.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Finishing up with your coaching program. So you do group coaching, and I presume that these are some of the topics that you talk about,
Yes.
exercise and protein and that. So let's sort of, I think, was it tonight or tomorrow that you have a call?
Tonight.
Yeah. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So what are like
tonight.
general topics so that people get an
Yeah.
idea?
So I basically created what I call the fueled and feminine metabolism methodology.
Nice.
So it's what I've used. I've basically gathered everything that I've used personally over the years and what I teach my clients when I work with them one-on-one to create this methodology. And it's really focused on fueling, strength training, creating stress buffers. That's what I like to call them. So, if you're going to be strength training as a female, that is a stress to the body. And so you want to design a lifestyle that's basically full of stress buffers to buffer the stress from your training and the stress, whatever other stressors are in your life, but try to create a life that's as, minimal stress as possible so that you are resilient to the stressors that you intentionally add in for health benefits. And then I also talk a lot about just honoring your femininity. So as women, I think a lot of women in this culture were really programmed to be productive and go all the time. We have to prove our worth. And that is really harmful on our physiology. Cause again, it's very high stress. And so I think that for our health, it's really important to really own the fact that we're women and we're different and we're wired differently. And what we need for optimal health is different from what a man might need for optimal health. So a lot of that is just getting really honoring and accepting our femininity.
I like that.
So I focus on that a lot as well.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And it's over the course of 12 weeks. You guys do, that's really great.
Yeah.
I think that is so brilliant, the classes, because they hold people accountable too, to show up and commit. And we all need accountability coaches, and then also paying for it instead of just trying to DM all these different people and hope that you get a response and that you're going to get all your problems fixed.
Yeah. It's such a problem. The DMs thinking that you're going to get free advice. If you really want to be helped, if you're not willing to pay for it, you're not going to get the help that you want.
Yeah, you're not committed.
Every result that I've created for myself is because I invested.
Totally. Yeah, it doesn't create the equal exchange as well, energetically speaking and stuff like that. So yeah, you have to.
Yeah. You have to respect that these people are this is their profession.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's time.
Yeah.
Time that they could be with their kid, time that they could be learning, doing all that.
Yeah.
So I love that. We're coming up on an hour. I have some information that you sent here, which I think is just fascinating. I think it's worth just touching on as we kind of finish up here, because I'm hearing so much more about breast implant illness from people, and so many people with these sort of, doctors can't diagnose the problem with, whether it's a fatigue issue or autoimmunity. And so the breast implant challenges, you're seeing this in your practice and we're hearing more about it.
Yeah.
Not necessarily an area that you generally focus on, but it's you've been...
Yeah, well, because I specialize in women's health, it's always a consideration and something to just be aware of, because this is, an issue that is unique to women, and women are struggling with all different types of symptoms. And so this is why it's sort of in the mainstream medical community, it is still considered a controversial issue, but I think a lot of people on the more holistic or naturopathic side of things can understand that, anytime you put a foreign object into the body, there's always a potential for an immune response or an inflammatory response. Breast implants are foreign bodies. And so just like any other foreign object that goes into the body, there's always a chance that there could be some type of reaction. Every woman's different. So we can't really predict, is this going to happen, or is she susceptible, or what is the specific reaction going to be? So it's something to consider if a woman has breast implants and she's has a, various symptoms and isn't getting better, then that's something that, has to be addressed.
Which is tough because, well, there's financial issues and then there's the psychological aspect of it, because it could be a noticeable difference in how people appear, but you don't want to be unhealthy. I have some friends who had all these weird issues. They got them removed, and during surgery there was like black necrotic tissue in the breast and like crazy stuff. And it's like, man, oh man, I don't think people would have ever gotten these things had they known that this was not just this organic pure silicone gel without.
Yeah. And that's a huge problem, is that, it is really the doctor or the surgeon's responsibility to communicate all the potential risks to women before they undergo the surgery. And I don't think that's happening. Everyone that I've talked to, friends who have gone through having implants, having them removed, said that if they had been told what they now know, they never would have gotten them. And I mean, implants have a boxed warning on the FDA.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah, they have a boxed warning. So I don't think that the warnings on there are getting conveyed because a lot of women are under the impression that they're totally safe.
I'm sure there's all sorts of chemicals and stuff like that in there, but is that part of it?
There's heavy metals. There's, there's two different types. There's the silicone and the saline. And with silicone, I think there's most of the complications or like related to breast implant illness are just the different types of immune or inflammatory reactions that occur. Same thing with the saline ones, but those actually have a valve. And it's not 100% airtight. And so it can become a breeding ground for like mold and bacteria and things like that. Yeah.
It gets infected essentially.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And then it's just this chronic inflammatory response, and people think, oh, well, you must be healthy. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
That is insane.
Yeah. So I have a friend who, she had like every single symptom you can imagine she was struggling with. And she said, looking back, it started probably like within months after she had her implants in, but she was sick for like years with every single food sensitivity, gut issues, fatigue, thyroid issues, hair loss, everything. And when she got them removed, everything improved.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was this in like weeks, or we're talking months? Or
after the removal?
Surgery? Yeah.
I think it was within weeks, like right
really
away.
It was like just health went to another level. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Gosh, I wish, and I know a lot more people are talking about this, and big names too. Danica Patrick and a bunch of other people are really talking about it. So I think it's causing some folks to realize.
Yeah.
Like,
well, with social media, I think this is probably something that's been going on for a lot longer than we realize, probably since breast implants became, so popular. But now with social media, we just have the ability to share so much more. So we're seeing it a lot more, I think. And I think from what I've heard, more surgeons are seeing it too. Like they might not say, oh, this is like a diagnosable condition, but they can't deny that when people are having them removed, their symptoms improve. So, yeah.
That would be tough. I mean, financially, if that was your main source of income, and you're like cosmetic surgeon like that, it'd be tough to that would put you in a conundrum. Like, I have to pivot careers, ethically, it would be hard to continue to put these things in people's bodies, knowing that they're going to come back out and they're going to have all these health issues as a result. So that would be very tough.
Well, and for women too, who have them, it's like, once you start to learn more and understand, it's probably, it's really scary. And then you have to think about, well, what's it going to take to have them removed? And that's expensive. It's not covered by insurance. So yeah, but it's a huge problem because I think some women think, oh, well, I'll just do these other things. I'll take care of myself in these other areas. I'll support detox, et cetera. But it's like, my friend who experienced it herself, she calls it a splinter. It's just a splinter in your body. It's always there. As long as it's there, there's something for it. The immune system is going to be highly stressed. There's something for it to protect. It tries to, the inflammatory cells will basically infiltrate the area. So it's like you have to remove the main obstacle to health. That's one of the primary fundamentals of the naturopathic is remove obstacles to cure. So.
Totally. Yeah. There's unmet needs. And like you could try to, I always think about, well, you could go in the sauna, but if you're heating up and moving blood around and there's a lot of inflammation, there's all this lymphatic tissue around the breast. Yeah, it might be helpful because you're detoxing, but then you're also stirring the pot a little bit as well. And
but you're not taking out the actual toxin.
Yeah. Yeah. Great point.
Yeah.
It's tough.
It is.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. There's a few websites that you sent to me. I'll put them in the show notes. Again, for people that are experiencing health issues, it's something they should be aware of. So Elly, really appreciate you coming on the show. It's great to have you back and sort of talk about all these issues and topics that I think are timely for people. If folks want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
They can find me on Instagram. It's dr.ellymichelle, or my website, which is drellymichelle.com.
Awesome. And then your courses and stuff like that are right there where people can check them out.
Yes. So I'm only offering the Metabolism mentorship. I'm running that different times throughout the year. So I'm doing one right now. I'll probably run another one sometime in the fall. Nice. So people can find the link to sign up for the interest list. So if they're interested, they want to get more information, once I start sending it out, they can find that in my Instagram bio.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks again for coming on. Thanks for tuning in, friends. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. Thank you for sharing this, and we'll catch you on a future one down the road.